Welcome to Beyond the Needle, the Aesthetics Business Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Ruse. I'm a former clinic manager turned digital marketing freelancer, and I've had the privilege of helping dozens of aesthetic practitioners across the UK and beyond grow their business. So I know firsthand just how challenging it can be to build a successful aesthetics practice in today's competitive market. Each week, I'm here to share real, actionable strategies and bring on expert guests to help you level up, attract more patients, and build a standout brand. Let's turn your passion into a thriving business together. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome a guest who is truly at the forefront of the aesthetic speciality, Dr. Sophie Shotter. Dr. Sophie is an award-winning aesthetic doctor with over a decade of medical experience, recently honoured as Aesthetic Practitioner of the Year at the 2023 Aesthetics Awards. As the founder and medical director of Illuminate Skin Clinic in Kent, as well as her practice in London, she's built a premium practice known for blending aesthetics with wellness to deliver holistic, cutting-edge treatments tailored to her patients' individual needs. Beyond her clinical work, Dr. Sophie is a recognised thought leader in aesthetics. She speaks at national and international conferences, trains fellow professionals, and serves on the board of trustees for the British College of Aesthetic Medicine, where she has recently been promoted to Vice President. And within this role, she works to raise standards and improve patient safety in our field. In this episode, we'll explore the secrets behind her success, including how she grew her patient base from zero, how she established a strong personal brand online, and her strategies for building a strong, value-driven team that matches her own ethos. If you're looking for actionable insights to elevate your own practice, you won't want to miss this conversation. So, Dr. Sophie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honoured.
No, it's my pleasure. It's a real honour to have you as the first guest on Beyond the Needle. So you're obviously a very well-established aesthetic doctor with a wealth of knowledge and experience behind you. So I'm sure that people are going to be able to take away a lot of valuable insights from this conversation today. And obviously we know each other very well. We've worked together for a long time. I'm sure a lot of people listening know you, or at least know of you. But do you want to start by telling me a little bit about you and your background and how you found yourself, getting into the crazy world of aesthetics all those years ago?
Yeah, so I'm a medical doctor by background, and I graduated in 2008. And for me, I loved my career in the NHS. I worked through several specialties through my foundation training, and then for 4 years did anaesthesia and intensive care. And I really, really loved it. But what I found myself doing was working a lot of ridiculous hours above and beyond what I should be, or, even what was really healthy, like 70 plus hour weeks regularly, because I was covering extras. I was single, I had no children. And while I loved it, I was burning out. And so I started to think, what could I do? And I'd always been curious about aesthetics, but a friend of mine had done some training and hadn't really made a success of it. So it kind of always made me hesitate about the investment in training. And so one day I just thought, I'm going to give it a go. And I never looked back. That was, for me, I just fell in love from day one. And I also very quickly realised that a one-day training course was not enough. And so I just did so much more training. I reinvested every penny I was making into more and more training. And a little while in, about 18 months or so, I realised I could only do one of these specialties to the standard that I wanted to. I always want to do everything I do well. And that was the day that I decided to leave my NHS training. I'd been a registrar and set up my own clinic, which was when Illuminate was founded in 2014. And yeah, from there, I've never looked back. There have been great times, there have been tough times, but I feel like I've learned so much about my business, about myself, about aesthetics, and I love that ongoing learning.
And when you decided to leave the NHS, had you already built a patient base, or did you kind of just go all in and put everything and leave the NHS and then put all of your focus into growing an aesthetics clinic?
I did have patients, but they were kind of scattered. So I'd been working from a few different locations, clinics where I'd rented rooms, and I had, from memory, it was probably about 300 patients. But obviously I had to pick one place to have my location. So I also knew that they wouldn't all follow me. So I picked a place called Kings Hill in Kent, which A, has a great local population, but B, is really well connected. So when I had patients in Ashford, Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells, they could all come to me quite easily. Each place was about a half-hour drive or so from where my new clinic was. Loads of parking, pretty easy to get to, and also easy to get into London. So that was why I picked where I did. I did have patients, but definitely not enough to sustain, a huge clinic and a huge team.
And when going back to training, what did you look for in a training provider? Because I feel like maybe back then aesthetics wasn't so saturated, but now it is, and it feels like there's training providers popping up here, there and everywhere. So how did you find one that you felt was the right one?
There were not many options back then at all. And the one that I picked was cosmetic courses. They were the best established and they were headed up by a plastic surgeon. And at the time, they were offering better and more advanced education than other places. But I do completely agree that there's a saturation now around training. But people now have a choice of good training providers that offer far more in-depth training than was available when I started, as well as mentorship, because I think that's so important. I self-created that. I had loads and loads of one-to-one training. So I created my own mentorship program. But nowadays, your level 7s, which is what I would advocate any new injector to aim to do, come with that component of mentorship. And so, there are some great training academies nowadays. Interface, headed up by James Olding, Harley Academy. There's some really good training programs out there.
You say when you set up Illuminate Skin Clinic, you had already 300 patients who you kind of had from working in different kind of spots around Kent. How did those people find you? What kind of, because you've got such a great personal brand online now, and you've got a real loyal following of organic, people who have found you over the years, and also the right kinds of people as well. So not just anyone and everyone, but you've got a really good following of women in their 30s, 40s and above who are, want subtle natural results. They're not just there to get their lips injected or their cheeks injected. They want someone to advise them about what's the best route for them, and they're open to, injectables, devices, whatever it might be. But how did you back then? Because 300 patients on your database sounds like quite a lot, especially for somebody who didn't have, a clinic location. You were kind of working from different places. So what did you do to kind of market yourself in the early days?
So, in the early days, I made my own website, the first one I ever did. Had no idea about SEO though, so
that is a minefield.
That wasn't in the mix. I went to networking events. Nowadays, I've got people who come to see me from all over the UK and even globally. Back then, I needed to build just local support. And so local networking events were really, really useful. I met some amazing and inspiring, particularly women. So that helped. I did things like editorial and advertorial with the small local magazines. So that then again builds familiarity with you on a local level.
Yeah.
And I also did way back when, Facebook and Twitter. Instagram wasn't really a thing when I first started. So this is going back to sort of 2012. Facebook was still a bit more of an easy space to do things organically in than it is now. And Twitter, at that time, it was a far more fun place to be than X is now. So yeah, I kind of did those things. I did create a YouTube channel, although at the time I didn't do an awful lot on it because I didn't really know. This is kind of a key thing. I was a doctor learning how to do business. There was a lot that I was learning by trying to attend online courses, attend workshops, trial and error, getting a few things wrong along the way. And I still remember, this was after I set Illuminate up, but I thought, right, so I'm going to try Facebook ads. And I did this online course with someone regarded as like one of the top people in the world on Facebook ads. And I really carefully implemented all of his steps and got 0 results. That was the day I realised, actually, no matter how hard I try, I can't do all of these things to the best ability. And you know better than anyone how quickly social media algorithms change. And, that's why working together for us is so perfect, because that's your expertise. You stay on top of what we need to be doing from an algorithm perspective to stay relevant to the platforms. And then it's my job to deliver the content for that. But You can't possibly keep up to date with being the best doctor you can be, being the best marketer you can be, being the best business owner you can be. You have to learn where to outsource, and marketing was an early one for me.
Yeah, delegation is, very, very important. I think it's very easy to want to juggle all of the hats, especially when you're in the early days of business and you're not earning, as much as you should be. Maybe you're just covering your expenses, and you're investing in training, you're investing in a premises, you're investing in products and insurance, and it all quickly adds up. But I also do think that it's important for you to maybe go down that route initially and learn the basics of marketing and business and stuff like that.
I totally agree on both levels. It's so important to know enough that you can't have the wool pulled over your eyes. And again, I had one really bad experience with that the first time I outsourced an SEO strategy. But luckily, I was then able to push back hard enough that they went, "We failed you," and I got money back. But that was a tough lesson. I'd invested in someone who I thought was an expert. I'd spent a lot of money, and I'd got nothing for it. So the fact that I was able to know enough to push back was really important. It's like that whole thing of, woman walks into car garage. It's that I always wanted to make sure that, fair enough, I might not be the expert at everything, but I want to know enough. And again, what you said about money, I'd made some money in my first year and I'd spent it all on more training, but I was very naive about the ongoing costs of running a proper business and a proper clinic. And, when you take into account all the things you listed off, the right products, sharps disposal, clinical waste, everything you have to do. And then, of course, when it comes to recruiting a team, and of course, you're still learning and you want to get better and educate yourself and invest in that, everything is really expensive. And there are people in the NHS still, or even in their early days, who look at a career in aesthetics as a cash cow, and it isn't. Of course there are amazing opportunities, but it's a lot of hard work, and I think that's something people need to remember.
Yeah, and there's a lot more competition out there now. It's become very oversaturated over the last 10 years. I mean, it's probably trebled, quadrupled since you started, the amount of practitioners that are now offering.
Massive. If not more, because if we take into account, I'd say probably tripled or quadrupled the medical practitioner or dental practitioners, but you look at lay people.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what did you first invest in when you outsourced to your marketing? What was it that you prioritised in the early days?
The very first thing was I got someone to help me to learn Twitter at that point and what to do well on what at that point was a popular social media platform. Because I still believe social media is such a good way of reaching people. Even if the platform that's the best over time has changed, I think there's huge opportunity without huge investment in social media. Huge financial investment, time investment is different. So that was a big early one. Relatively early in, I had branding done. Actually, no, that was at the very beginning for Illuminate. I had branding done, and then on the back of the branding had a good website built, and then tried to invest in SEO but got that bit wrong or picked the wrong people at the time. So I think we have to think about our websites and our social media presence as being our shop fronts, and I think it's crucial that they represent you and do a good job of that. I still remember my very first website. I wrote all the copy for it. I remember sitting on my last holiday before I left the NHS, and I didn't take another proper holiday for 7.5 years after that, and I was sat on the beach with my laptop out writing copy. So there were the bits that I knew I could do myself, although even that I realised 2 years down the line from that, I realised I'd written it wrong. I'd written the copy from an expert standpoint, not from a consumer standpoint. And it's very hard for us as practitioners to put ourselves in a potential patient's shoes who doesn't have the knowledge that we do. So the first things were good social media, a website and branding.
So you're not on Twitter anymore, but no. You are very, very much present on, your main channels are obviously your Instagram, and that's what does the most for you in terms of brand awareness and leads and inquiries. And communities. I mean, your Instagram has such a lovely community, which I feel like TikTok's quite easy to get reach on, or it was when you first started on TikTok. It has become a little bit more difficult over the last couple of years, but the community there, it's completely different.
Exactly. So I see Instagram as where my tribe is, I guess. And TikTok, I've actually got slightly more followers on TikTok than I have on Instagram, but I don't hang out on TikTok because you don't get the kind of the lovely engagement with your tribe that you do over on Instagram. And it feels just more commercial somehow over on TikTok.
It does, definitely. Yeah, your Instagram, and like I said earlier, you have such a lovely engaged following of people who are your potential patients. And I feel like there's still this misconception that women in their 40s, 50s and above are hanging out on Facebook, and that might still be the case, but your following is mostly women over the age of 40. That's who makes up the larger percentage of your following, and that's the same for a lot of aesthetic practitioners with a similar target audience to you. What do you think has been key in attracting those types of people onto your Instagram and engaging with them and helping them feel like that you're the expert in their eyes? Because what I think is really interesting about your social media as well is you rarely, if ever, share before and after photos. And I think that's what panics a lot of people when they first start. They think they need to have all these before and after photos, or no one's going to think that they're any good at what they do. And it's also very hard to get before and after photos because not many people are happy to have their face shared or to openly admit to having treatments. So how do you think you have managed to kind of pull those people in and get them to trust you and like you and feel like you're the expert, you're the one they want to go to when they want to explore treatments, and without having before and after photos?
So I think first thing is being authentic, being yourself. What you see on Instagram is me. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. And therefore, if people then come and see you in clinic, there's no difference. And I do find that kind of the feeling that they've got to know me already massively helps, that they have a bit more trust in me when they first step through my door, which is a lovely thing. Second up is consistency, both in tone and kind of in frequency of posting, because I think if you want to be seen, you have to post regularly. Or if you know you're not going to be able to post every day, then don't start out trying and then stop for a week and then start again but only manage every 3 days. Figure out what's going to be achievable for you and stick to it, and then you will get seen. And consistency and tone, think about, and this is something you talked about on your first episode so amazingly, think about who your audience is. Who do you want to attract? I have got younger patients as well, but I've got the younger patients who really want to look supernatural and age very well. So my key message is natural, but the majority of my patients are older and, they're wanting to age the best version of themselves they can. They are already aging to various degrees. And those people don't want to see big lips, even if they're well done big lips. They want to see things that resonate with them, and particularly, again, with how they feel. So the absence of before and afters on my part was really deliberate. And we do put the occasional one in and we talk it through. But for the same reason as I don't want my patients coming in with a celebrity photo saying they want to look like someone, if I post a before and after and then someone comes to me and says, I want you to do what you did for that person, but every face is so fundamentally different structure, different skin, different aging process going on. And that might not be possible. So what I prefer to do is try and deliver value through educating, talk to people, give them information. And then, of course, we have befores and afters in clinic that we can share. Patients are far more likely to be happy to have their photo shown in clinic to someone who's interested rather than plastered all over social media. And I haven't given someone unnecessary expectations. And I also think patients nowadays are really, really wary about befores and afters. They're very difficult to do well, although I'll be honest, with my new Aura device, it makes it very easy. But generally, getting consistent befores and afters is really, really difficult. And then if you can sit there and you can pick that photo apart, the light's different, the angle's slightly different. It may be that there's a really good result, but the patient who's looking at it online and picks those things up doesn't trust you anymore. And so for me, that trust is the key pillar. And so I would just rather do things in a way that focuses on delivering value, educating, and then talking to patients about what's achievable for them.
Yeah, I think that's so, so important. And your Instagram has become over the years a really kind of like educational hub where people can go and learn about, you know, different treatments, different concerns, what are the different options out there. And you will regularly talk about, you know, even devices that you don't even offer at your own clinic because they're things that people are asking you.
And that's my whole aim with my Instagram. I've got just under, at the time of recording, just under 33,000 followers, I think. And they're not all ever going to become my patients. But if I can help them to walk into a consult with someone else feeling better informed and therefore being safer, that's my aim.
I mean, you are so engaging on camera and you're so confident on camera as well. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with as well. I mean, it's something that like 99% of people will say to me is they hate being on camera. You know, they can talk all day to their patients about treatments, but as soon as someone puts a camera in front of them, it's like, you know, all the information's just fallen out of their brain. Did you invest in anything kind of to help you, like any courses or training to help you get that confidence in front of the camera, or what techniques have you found helpful?
I would say it wasn't something I ever hated, but I'm definitely better at it now than I was even 5 years ago. I think a key thing is I'm not aiming for perfection. I don't care if I stutter in the middle or stumble on a word. Again, for the people watching it, you know it's real. I did do a couple of training courses, but not about filming in this way. I remember when I was first appointed actually to the Allergan faculty back in, I can't remember if it was 2018. I invested for myself in an amazing speaker training course. And there's a couple of great speaker trainers out there. And that definitely helped me to become more aware of many things. Even though I'd done speaking before, that really helped me in my confidence and my presence. I then also did a media skills training course. And again, a key thing, this was more around being interviewed by the media. So one thing I always make sure I do is I plan what I want to say. And of course, when we're recording social content, I'm not being interviewed. So it's not that there's an interviewer who maybe is trying to trip me up and make me say something I didn't intend to say, which is much easier. But for example, if we're filming a video that's my 5 top products to do this, I will think about what those 5 are before I start. So I don't just go in and start randomly talking. I have a strategy and a plan. And if I'm recording longer form content for anything, at times if I'm planning a lecture as well, I use this where I plan a particular flow out and I just bullet points in boxes, but that help me to have direction for where I'm going so that I know that I use a lot of storytelling as well, which I think is really, really important in videos. But with the social content, just imagine you're talking to a patient because the people watching it are potential patients. So imagine you're saying it to one person sat across from you. Plan what you want to say. Don't worry about perfection. And I think possibly most importantly is just practice. You'll get better.
Yeah. I think a lot of people as well struggle to, you know, they have so much to say about a subject, or they want to go in, say they're talking about jowls, how they can improve jowls. They want to go into every single detail about what causes jowls and what treatments can, but you don't do that.
It's a good point. Yeah. Because again, that goes back to kind of what I was saying about when I first wrote my website content. As experts, we hold an awful lot of information and detail in our heads. Now, that's crucial to us to be able to formulate the best treatment plans and execute the best treatments. But our patients don't need to know every nuance of that detail. It would be far too overwhelming for them. So think about what they really need to understand and know and deliver that in your content. And again, you know, think about what the most important points are in your time limit. Are you doing a 30-second video? Are you doing a minute and a half? And plan what's the most important things, because it's not going to be the anatomy of the jawline.
Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, all your content needs to do is show people that you're the expert and you know what you're talking about. And then the consultation is the place that you would then go into more depth about exactly what you might do.
Exactly. And that's another key one, because, you know, obviously I talked about my tribe and the community, and I get so many lovely comments, messages and so on, and we really try and engage with everyone. But there's a lot of people who will, when you start producing good content, start asking you for personal advice. And that's what you can't do on social media. You can't deliver that ethically without knowing more about an individual and having examined them. And so that's where I will always say, I will always guide people towards a consultation. So it's a great idea to, again, going back to your first episode, have an online booking link set up. And when you get something that feels a bit more like something that needs personal advice, explain that you can't give that over social media, but you'd be delighted to meet them for a consultation, and here's your link.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of social media, you've also, I mean, you don't get many negative comments on Instagram, more so on TikTok. I think that's just down to the lack of community. But how do you deal with those negative comments?
The vast majority of the time, I just laugh them off. Like, there was, it'll be things like, I'll have done a post about wrinkle treatments, for example, and someone will say, well, what about good lifestyle and so on? And I'm like, absolutely, but we talk about that in a lot of posts as well. Scroll through the grid and you'll find it all. Or I remember there being a comment about me personally. Most of the comments around my 40th birthday post were so lovely and amazing. I did a thing with Grazia about the treatments I'd had, and someone commented about, I don't know, it was something derogatory, and it's water off a duck's back. It's, I'm like, seriously, it reflects more on you than it does on me. The one that was a little bit trickier recently, and I think you were shocked by this one as well, was when someone in America with about 350,000 followers posted something accusing me of using one of her photos in one of our reels. And we hadn't. Yeah. And in the end, we were able to prove we hadn't. But she put this really threatening post up, count your days. It was really vile. And then didn't apologise, did take it down, but it was, I ultimately think she was doing it for attention for herself rather than anything else. But having to deal with that, and it was about a reel we'd done about 4 months previously, so finding the original photo wasn't the easiest. We did eventually, but that was really stressful because I was thinking, gosh, she's got 350,000 followers. She's posted something awful about me and accusing me of being kind of anti-women and undermining confidence. And this is out there in the public domain. And, it is the knife edge of social media. Like I said earlier, it's a great place to grow organically and engage with people that you couldn't in normal life. But there's also the exposure that can come with that, and you do need systems in place to deal with it. The biggest one I would say is keeping an eye on your comments all the time. Not obsessive. I'm not on Instagram all the time by any means, but I do monitor what's said about me, keeping an eye out, responding accordingly, and I've got you on speed dial as well for advice.
And I think the key thing as well is not feeling like you need to respond to them all the time. Obviously, things like, in that instance with that woman with 300,000 followers, I mean, that just shows the dark side of social media where, cancel culture and all that kind of thing.
There are some that, we just like the comment on, good for you. There you go. Want to say something trolly?
And I think that's the best approach to have sometimes.
If it makes your day happy to try and make someone else's worse, that's sad for you. So I think it's the tough thing because, the minor ones, just make them go away. If you ignore them, they're not going to reply to you again. It's not going to escalate. Like the comment if you want, it shuts it down. But the big ones that carry reputational threat, you need a strategy in place to deal with those because, we only have one reputation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it does put a lot of people off. I think sometimes posting content of their face on social media and being the face of their brand because they're worried about what other people might think or what other people might say. But at the end of the day, not everyone's going to like you. And I always think getting negative comments is actually sometimes a good thing because it just means that your content is reaching more people. And there's always going to be somebody that has something bad to say. You can delete it, you can hide it.
I'm not going to be the right practitioner for every patient, and not every patient's going to be the right patient for me, and that's fine. But being true to yourself, being authentic, means you will attract the tribe that belongs to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for somebody who's starting out, or maybe, they've been going for a little while, but they're not getting the kind of results that they want off social media or in general with their marketing, what are the kind of 3 things that have made the biggest impact for you, or 3 things that you would recommend to kind of grow their brand effectively?
So I will say probably the most invaluable for me has been outsourcing social media. And I'll say the results that we've had since we've been working together have been just exponential. And for me, that's, in a clinician's day, you've got so many jobs, so many priorities, so many things you have to do. You're in between two patients and you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to record that Instagram video and I must post it tonight. And then you finish your day and you're exhausted. You think, oh God, I've got to log on and I've got to get that up. It means you're not focusing on it properly. You're not giving it due diligence. And so working with someone, A, who understands how to do it properly, and B, whose passion and job it is to do it, is going to get more for you. So that's number one. Second, that I find super helpful is, and again, you talked about this in episode 1, but content creation days. For me, my days are hectic. I am, and many clinicians are, I am going from A to B to C. There's the emails in between. I'm doing an MBA. So many balls in the air. If I have 4 hours booked out for filming, it's my priority. For those 4 hours, that's what I'm doing. And it's in the diary. And we book them about 3 months ahead. We do one every month. And it means that I have this bank of content ready to go. So that makes my life so much easier. And then, of course, there's the odd reactive thing we do in between. That's easy to fit in. And I guess last but not least would be engaging. Don't just post and expect to get results. You need to build community. This means engaging with other people or other businesses who want to engage with your business. You need to grow actively. It's not just going to happen if you sit
absolutely.
back.
And if you reply to the comments and show your followers a little bit of love when they take the time to leave a comment on your video or ask a question, they're just going to come back and do it again. They'll feel like they've got that connection with you.
Exactly. Reward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emotional reward, which is lovely. We all love connection.
No, that's been really insightful. If we just talk about building a team, obviously, I mean, since I've worked with you for 5 years, and when I first met you, I think you had a team of
7, I think,
or even less than that, I'd say, maybe 4.
When COVID started, there were 7 of us.
Yeah, I mean, but now you've got a team of over 20.
Yeah.
When did you know it was the right time to bring on your first team member? How early into your business was it when you brought on that first person?
It was relatively quick, about 3 or 4 months. I was outsourcing phone answering already, but I just wasn't delivering. Part of my main motivation for leaving the NHS was to deliver a level of care that I was proud of all the time. And I felt like I couldn't do that without having someone to help me do that. If I'm in with a patient, having someone to meet and greet the next patient, these things help and make a clinic run more smoothly, as well as delivering a better experience. So I did it quite early, but just one.
And was that a receptionist or was that a therapist?
So actually it was a therapist who also helped support receptionists. So it meant that we could do some service provision as well.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense to bring on a therapist quite early into the business, because obviously it's not all about the injectables.
Yeah.
Skin is such an important part of it, and that's kind of like passive income in a way, because you're not having to make that money and do those treatments.
Exactly. And I guess, there are many different ways to run clinics. If you want to have a lifestyle business, something that is your job, is your career, you may love it, but you're not looking to grow something that brings you revenue independent of yourself, then don't hire too many people. Keep it simple, outsource wherever you can rather than employing, because having and building a good team is both the most rewarding and the most challenging thing I've done. And, now I have help running my team. I have an amazing business manager, Kate, and I have clinic managers in each clinic as well. And I think hiring, for me, the thing that I always look for front and centre is values. Are their values aligned with my values and the business values? You can't teach that. If they're not, then it's a non-starter. If they are, then I look at other things like skills, but I always remember skills can be taught. And I think, when you're in an earlier stage of a business journey, looking at people who can multitask. So like I said, a therapist who also did some reception work, that's a really good way of going. But as you get further down the line, really thinking about what it is you need and defining that skill set really clearly. But yeah, running a team has brought me my biggest lessons and my biggest joy, because actually the thing that I love seeing more than anything is other people flourishing, whether that's through mentorship or in my team and growing my team itself. And every team member you have is a representation of you. And so have that in your mind when you're recruiting them as well.
What kind of things do you look for when you're bringing on a new team member to, make sure that their ethos is kind of aligned with yours?
I think you really need to get a feel for them. Of course, there's standard things I'd look at in an interview, like, work ethic and what are they trained in, what's their experience. But then you get clues about who they really are. I want to make sure that I feel when they're communicating with my patients that they're going to feel like an extension of me, that they're going to care about my patients. I think obviously integrity is a crucial one, patient centricity, so many different things, but really holding those core values for you, whatever they are, and you should know them, at the center of everything you do. Oh, one other thing I'll say is how they're going to fit in with the rest of your team, because when you bring a new member into a team that's already established, that can be a challenging time. So you do always need to consider how that integration is going to work.
So would you recommend bringing them in for kind of a trial day before?
Yeah, that can work. Or at least coming in and meeting the team ahead of time, and clear communication with your existing team about what you're doing and why as well, so they don't feel threatened. And
sometimes it's really just as easy as that, isn't it? Just having a conversation.
I think most things boil down to communication.
Whether
they go well or whether they go badly, at the root of it is either good or bad communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Very wise words. When it came to purchasing your first device, because I think this is an area that a lot of people worry about, they might have trained in aesthetics, spent a lot of money training in injectables and mastering their craft in that area, and then they think, okay, do I need to now bring in a device? So-and-so down the road is offering RF microneedling and software. People might go to them because they've got all these other options over me. At what point do you think it's the right time for a practitioner to consider investing in a device?
So it depends on the device. Do not do what I did, which is when I first started Illuminate with my relatively small business. Anyone who knows me now knows I have quite a lot of devices. Not as many as some of my friends, but I do have quite a few. And I bought my first one, which was Cool Sculpting, as I opened my Kent clinic in 2014. And I had bought into it. Amazing science, amazing results. I loved it. And I bought into, this is going to bring patients to your clinic, which is what, of course, you're told when someone's trying to sell you a machine. Very expensive. And it's a mistake that I ended up funding out of my injectables income for a long time. Having Cool Sculpting wasn't the mistake. The point in time at which I bought it was. So I would always say, grow your database to a point where you have enough people on it to sustain that device. Don't expect the device to bring you new people. It might, but that's a bonus. Then ask your patients what they'd like to see you offering. They'll guide you. What is it they're interested in? And then cater to that rather than what you think they want. And then also looking about what's available in your area already and thinking about whether there's something that can differentiate you slightly, so that, for example, laser hair removal is available everywhere nowadays. It's so commoditized. It's really hard to make it a commercial success if you market laser hair removal. Very hard, even though it's a huge market. Having a laser that does hair removal as an add-on, perfect. But, have a think about what you can do that's different. And I would always say there's a lot of variation in the quality of devices. And one thing I never wanted was anything except the best in terms of quality of products I inject and quality of devices I own. So that means they're going to be expensive, and plan how you're going to finance that. And there are lots of options available, but think very carefully, because it's not cheap. And then you have the maintenance and you have the servicing and you have the consumables, and make sure you've got a good launch marketing strategy. And if you do, and you have a big enough database to carry it, then you can make a great success of devices in a relatively short space of time.
Yeah. I think what you said as well about asking your patients is really, really key, because I think a lot of the time people see other practitioners using something, or they hear other practitioners talking about advice, and they think that, they go off of that, or how great it is that they've had other people talking about it, and rather than asking their patients.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the first thing everybody needs to do, is make sure it's something that your existing patients would be interested in. Will it complement the other treatments that you're offering? And then consider it.
Exactly. And there are devices like, I think an easy one is something like a needle diathermy device. Everyone's got some broken veins. Low cost investment, easy to begin with. Some sort of skin analysis technology is really useful at the beginning, but you don't need to be thinking about spending 50k plus when you're still a new practitioner. And I cannot possibly have in my clinic every device to do everything for every patient. So building a referral network around you, if I think someone needs an ablative laser resurfacing, we're not going to do that. I'm going to send them to someone who does, who I trust. So thinking about, okay, you're going to do this device, but you're not going to do that. So who could you recommend, and might they be able to send you patients back for something else? Think strategically.
Yeah, I think what you said about investing in a low-cost device that will help target something like thread veins is quite clever as well, because that's going to get people through the door who might not have ever even thought about injectables or other skin treatments, and then you can build that relationship with them and maybe get them to come back for something else, and all of a sudden there are someone coming back regularly for treatments every month or every few months. The field of aesthetics is constantly evolving. Are there any trends or technologies that you're particularly excited about right now?
A few things overlap between longevity and aesthetics, because ultimately it's all about aging well inside and out, and that I think is really key. If you're not, I think we will see over the next coming years, although it won't happen overnight, that more and more of our treatments are targeted at why we age rather than the signs of aging that we largely treat at the moment. And that's where regenerative treatments come in as well. I think that whole concept of stimulating our body to work differently isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. And I think another key one is what we're going to see more and more of, which is kind of AI tools coming into what we do. The amazing imaging device that I'm using, that does utilize AI in it, but the photos we can get and the reproducibility is exceptional. Skin analysis tools that patients can have on their phones. There's so much more we're going to see in that regard. And the constant evolution is something that's part of what drew me to aesthetics. I love the pace of change. What's important for all of us as practitioners is to stay on, be data driven. Don't just buy into the marketing fad. A huge one at the moment talking about longevity is we're seeing injectable NADs everywhere. And injectable NAD can't work. Like physiologically on a science level, injectable NAD, whether it's IV or subcut or intramuscular, zero way it can work. There's a very, very rare biochemical state where it can, but it doesn't really happen. So it's those sorts of things. It can be very easy to be trend-led and marketing-led rather than looking at what the data says. But for me, that's kind of where I see aesthetics heading. We know that already the wellness space, the longevity space is largely interlinked with aesthetics in the UK, and I don't see that trend changing. I think we will be changing how we treat to be much more about why we age rather than the signs of it.
Absolutely. It's definitely a very interesting place to be right now, and I think consumers are becoming more and more knowledgeable about the wellness side of it as well, and the biohacking and the regenerative treatments. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Soph. This has been a really, really insightful conversation, and I'm sure a lot of people would have got lots of great tips out of it to implement within their own business. So before I let you go, would you like to tell people where they can find you if they want to learn more about you, or even if they want to go and listen to your own podcast, which will be really valuable to lots of practitioners as well, I think?
Oh, thank you, Em. So sure, head over to Instagram. I'm at Dr. Sophie Shotter. To be honest, everything else about me you can find in my link in bio. You'll find a link to Spotify, to Apple, for my podcast, which is called Age Well with Dr. Sophie Shotter, to my website. And yeah, any other questions that follow on from this, I'm an open book. Feel free to reach out, and I'm always happy to give extra advice if I'm able to. And thank you, Em, for having me. I'm honoured to be your first guest.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you.